Hi, Marco.
Hi, Anand. Good evening, my time. Good day, your time.
Very nice to see you.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah.
I'm very happy to be here.
Great. Today my guest is Marco Lübbecke. He's a full professor and chair of operations research at Aachen University in Germany. Marco's research interests are in computational integer programming and discrete optimization, covering the entire spectrum from fundamental research to industry-scale applications. A particular focus of his work is on decomposition approaches to exactly solving large-scale real-world optimization problems. Marco teaches more than 2,000 students in more than 5 courses every year. He's an author of many papers published in prestigious journals such as OR, MathProg, and Management Science. He served on the Informs board as Vice President for Information Strategy and recently co-founded, along with Professor Panos Pardalos, which was here as a guest, the Springer Journal Operations Research Forum. Marco is a father of 6 children and is a very popular figure on Twitter. So Marco, thank you so much for being here, and I'm so happy. How are you?
I'm good, thank you, and I'm really happy to be here. It's an honor to be your guest, and I'm very curious about the next hour.
Yeah, that's totally my pleasure. So, from which part of Germany are you from?
Originally, I'm from a part which is in the center of nowhere. So it is called, the city is Helmstedt, which is close to the former border. You know, there were 2 Germanys once, the eastern and the western parts, and we were walking distance from the former border. There was just a fence.
Wow. But is it near Wolfsburg, I think?
It is near Wolfsburg, yes. So this is where we moved when I was, I think, 5 years old. Then we moved to the Volkswagen city. My father was working there, and we moved there. And this is where I went to school. And close to that, I also went to the university. So this is where I grew up, yes.
Okay, so you grew up during the 70s and 80s. I'm giving away your age now a little bit, but
I will turn 50 this weekend. Yes, you can say that.
Yeah, happy birthday. So it was a period in which there were 2 Germanys. And
Correct.
What are your memories from those days?
As I said, so it was walking distance, and we were actually walking there. So I was often with my grandparents. They had a dog, and we were just walking the dog along the fence, and maybe it was just normal, so I never thought about that. We were talking about there is the other side, but it was just as that. So it was just normal, really.
Right, so you didn't really care about that, right? It was
No,
something that
because
really used
that
to.
was the status, yes.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And do you remember how you felt after the fall of the Berlin Wall?
That was later when I was at school, so I was like 16, 17,
18, I think.
right? 18, yes. And so we knew that was special, but maybe the consequences were, so the immediate consequences were we could go over the border, and we did, and looked around and also smelled around, so it smelled differently. It was just a different world, but I mean the consequences of all that, they were not really immediate to us at the time, even though it was, of course, it's a big thing. It also changed my life. So my current wife is from the eastern part, so everything would have been totally different. Mm-hmm. But at the time, I didn't realize. So the most interesting thing was we could walk over. That was cool.
Right. Yeah. I don't remember that well because I was small, but one thing that I really remember is that song by Scorpions, Wind of Change, mm-hmm. that is very, very related to the fall of the wall. Mm-hmm. And also I remember the next year when Germany won the World Cup in Italy. Brazil just got out really soon at the round of 16 or something. And for some reason, I decided to support Germany. Maybe I like the jersey, and I like the guys like Jürgen Klinsmann and Lothar Matthäus. You know, I was a big fan of those guys. Mm-hmm. And it lasted for a year or two, even after the World Cup. I think that between 1990 and 92, for some reason, I was very interested in the German national team. But then after a while, things got back to normal, and I started to care about the Brazilian team. Maybe they improved, and I got more enthusiastic about that. And who were your role models while growing up?
That's a good question, and because you alerted me of that question, I thought about it, and maybe there are not real role models I can remember. There was no one I was looking to walk after, I think.
Mm-hmm. Interesting.
Yeah, it is interesting, and maybe I should be worried, but there's no one I could remember, actually.
Wow. And you had access to a computer at the age of 13 or so. And that kind of changed your life, right?
That's also true. So I was 13 when we bought a Commodore C64, and I spent a lot of time there. I learned BASIC first, and then later on also assembler, and I loved that. I was playing video games, of course, also, but all this learning about the machine, and it was so small, so limited that you could learn everything about the machine. I tried to absorb as much as I could. Yeah, so that changed definitely something.
Yeah, and working with limited resources sounds familiar.
Totally. I don't know if there is actually a bridge for what we are doing now, but I'm pretty sure that working with the limited resources, I mean, computationally, that also influenced me later on when coding, for example. So I'm maybe today I know that there are all the fancy libraries and all the resources are there, and I know the value of that. But for a long time, I just used what was there, and I didn't even dare to use, for example, in C++, the standard library. Mm-hmm. So I was just maybe scared of all the fancy stuff because this was not there in the early days. So maybe I stayed there for a long time. Uh-huh.
So you took programming classes even before joining the university?
Yes and no. So when I was at school in the final years, there was a physics teacher, and he was maybe among the very first to teach computer science-like courses. So we learned a bit about hardware, about logic, and also about coding. So we learned Pascal and Modular 2. I wouldn't call it a coding class, but at least we picked up some things, yes.
Yeah, and that influenced you later on, for sure, right?
I think so. At least I wasn't scared. I liked that. I liked it, like math at school, actually, because both is like, you know when you're right and when you're wrong. So this is something I liked about the natural sciences anyway, so in math in particular. So it was different to other subjects like geography or the German language, where everything is also subject to some interpretation. In math, everything is clear. And when you're good at it, you know when you're wrong. Mm-hmm. And that gave me some safety, because this knowing when I'm wrong it gave me a sign where I could learn or had to learn more, because then it felt right. And that feeling, I had the feeling, and this is what I liked about the math, and also maybe about programming. That was logic. Mm-hmm. And even today, so I'm fond of this structure about bugs. I love bugs, for example. So and really that's true, because
that's why you're in the garden now, right? Because you're maybe looking for them.
Not these bugs, but I love these bugs too. But also when we find a mistake, I'm always kind of happy, because then I know there's one less. I never assume they're all gone, but I know that there's one less. You know that sometimes there's this feeling something doesn't feel right. The results are too good. The numbers doesn't feel right. There must be something wrong, and we are looking and waiting and switching, and after a while someone says, "Oh, do you know what? So we got it all wrong. We had a bug, and that sub idea whatever, so it didn't work out." And yes, that's cool, because now we know why. Uh-huh. And this is a question that drives me all the time, maybe this why. So why is it so good? Why is it so bad? So why should that be true? So why drives me? And that is good in math and programming, right? So that gives answers.
Yeah, you can see the passion you talk about math and also programming in a way, and this encounter, let's say, you had with the computer when you were growing up. Can we affirm that at that time your main influence was a machine rather than a person?
In contrast to a human, right? Together with what I said before, I would say yes. So at least it had a big impact on everything that followed.
Yeah.
So I must confess.
But yet, you picked math and French as emphasis when you're close to finish your high school.
Correct. So that was a strange combination, actually. It was even a strange combination to have a language and a natural science. So we were quite free in selecting these specialties. And I took both because I like both. J'aime le français. Oui, oui. So I still like French, and I still like some French guys. And it was good. So I never regretted that.
Okay. And what did you do after finishing high school?
So at the time, there was an obligatory military service, or you could have a substitute service. So I was applying for the second one. That time you had to apply, or at least you had to deny the military service. It was quite complicated. I did that, and I spent 1 year as a caretaker in a home for the elderly.
Oh.
Which was a wonderful experience for me, because until then, as you said, so I was dealing with machines and with math and all that nerd stuff. And then we were dealing with humans and with manual work. So that was a completely different world. And it also made me think about whether that should be a path for me. I didn't know. Maybe with humans, because I liked that. And I liked the manual work. So they taught us really everything. So just switching light bulbs, painting the walls, doing the plumbing. So also working with wood. So my colleagues were a woodworker, and so I was the dumbest person. I had 2 left hands, as we say in Germany, so I didn't know anything, and I learned a lot. And also this had a big influence on my life today. So because when there's something to fix in the house, I know very well whether I'm able to fix that or not, and if I am, I will do it. So that was a huge change in my life that year.
Right. So you were the first member of your family to go to the university, correct?
Correct. Even to high school. So in Germany, we have this really old and strange systems of having 3 levels of school, and only if you go to the first highest level, you can continue to university. It's still in place today. It should be replaced according to many people. But I was the first at the top level. It just happened. And therefore, I was also the first to go to the university, yes. So there was no, let's say also at school, there was no guidance, or there was support. So my parents supported me and they encouraged me, of course, but they said, so we don't know where this is leading to. So if you would like to go there, go there. And I thought, okay, I would like to go there. I went there. So, but that was my choice, because they had no, so they could not, they had no first-hand experience, so to speak, right? They said, okay, if you would like to do this, we go. And I did. So, and that was the same for the university. Yeah.
Right. So you had support, but you didn't have much advice, because
Correct.
there were no people in your family that was experienced to
advise me. Yes. Yes.
Yeah. So it was an adventure in a way.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. With hindsight, yes, it was. I mean, I didn't know. It was just normal, right? So I didn't ask, where are the persons to advise me? Shouldn't there be anyone? Maybe that is also, so if you're not, let's say, if you're not born into this situation, you don't know the protocols. So I was not missing that, right? So I was not like, where's my advisor? I was not missing the advisors, because I wouldn't expect that there should be one.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I know.
Maybe I was naive, but that was it. Yeah.
Yeah, it comes to that point of you can't possibly miss something that you don't know that it even exists.
Exactly. Yeah.
So yeah, but how did you choose a career?
That was a series of coincidences, I would say. So I liked, as you said, I liked math, I liked natural sciences. So I wanted to take a subject at the university that was quite new at the time. It was, in German, it's Wirtschaftsinformatik, so it's like maybe information systems, something like this. It's computer science and a little bit of business, information, all that. And I was applying to that university, which is the closest to Wolfsburg, so it's in Braunschweig, the closest city, 20 kilometers. I was applying only there. What else should I do? And then I did this after school, then I did the civil service. Then the civil service was over, and then I got a message, you're not accepted by the university. I mean, I was applying only there. I was surprised. But that was maybe the first thing that did go wrong in my life. I mean, accidentally, everything turned out until then. And they declined me. And then I went, so there were some people at the university I could talk to, so I went there. They gave me a brochure. So here is mathematics. You can always start mathematics. There's not much demand for that, so they always have places. You can do that. So, and I took the brochure and I read it, and it sounded nice, and I liked math anyway. So I decided to enroll in mathematics. Only to know 1 month later, I was on a waiting list apparently for the original subject, and they admitted me to the original subject. And I said no. I decided. I mean, because I liked it, I decided to go for math. So I started it, I will finish it. So that was, I never regretted and never looked back. I just went there. So that was math. So that was one, let's say, coincidence, but a very nice one. So today I'm so happy that I didn't take the other path, Wirtschaftsinformatik. I'm so happy about that. But never tell anyone, okay? Well, it's among us.
Yeah, I can totally relate. I know what you mean, really. Can you explain how the program was organized? How many years, and was it bachelor's and master's?
Yes, it was different than today. Today it's bachelor's and master's, so like the Anglo-American system. At the time it was called Vordiplom, so that was the undergraduate studies, and the diplom, the graduate, maybe graduate studies. So comparable to bachelor's and master's, it took 2 years each in mathematics. So after 4 years, that was the regular time, you were done with a master's comparable degree, and this is what I did. So after 4 years, I was done. And so the bachelor's Vordiplom, that was mainly laying the foundation, so the introductions to everything like numerics, stochastics, optimization, and all that. Differential equations, and then later on in the so-called masters, you could specialize in certain topics.
So after 4 years, you had an equivalent of bachelor's and master's.
I think so. At least this is how we count it today. I don't know whether it's completely equivalent according to today's standards. But
did you have to do any research work or write a dissertation at the end?
Well, yes, you had to write a final thesis, like a master's thesis. It was called the Diplomarbeit, and yes, so that was comparable, of course.
Okay.
That was in my case. It was on polytopes, so enumerating the vertices and facets of polytopes.
So you worked at UPS for a couple of years, actually.
During my studies, yes. So that was a student job. They were advertising that, and they were paying very well. So that was very attractive. What was not so attractive is the working hours. So it started 10 to 4 in the morning. So in the summer, it was even already light when I went there. And the satisfactory thing is when it's 8 o'clock in the morning, you are already done with your work. So that was nice. Then I went to the university and I slept at the university. That was not so nice. But it was, so at UPS, that was, without knowing it, also some encounter with OR, because they were applying tools which were very organized for the tour planning. So I was loading the cars, the vans, the delivery vans. And it worked like, okay, there was a conveyor belt, or the parcels arrived. So you took one that is for your car. So apparently, because everyone was for some city, and you took it and you were looking at the address, and then you had to memorize. Okay, the address maps at a certain number, the number maps at a certain place in the car, and then this is where you went, and then you do one by one, and the next day you are measured according to the many errors that you made in the morning before. But I like this because I like the numbers, so that was an easy and even rewarding, so a very satisfactory job for me. I liked it a lot. And I only left there because there was an even better opportunity for me to work at the university as a student assistant.
Okay.
So that was then at the Department of Mathematical Optimization. So that was also the department where I had my first encounter with OR, so to speak. So they were giving a lecture, Introduction to Mathematical Optimization. So like a little bit nonlinear stuff, a little bit discrete, a little bit linear. And I like that, so we can talk about that later. But they had a student job, and that was like creating a web page. You say, oh, okay, everyone is creating web pages these days, but yes, but that was 20 years back. Yeah. 94.
More than 20 years ago.
Yeah, look, so, and they were, so now you think, okay, the internet, that's the web, right? But no, the internet, I mean, that is just port AT, and this is how we did it. So we were programming a service on port AT to serve a website that we were coding in HTML. So these were among the first websites in Germany, I think. So my advisor at the time, Uwe Zimmermann, he was very fond of these technologies. So he had a Gopher servers and FTP, and he wanted to have a www, a web page. And we did that. So it was my job, so to speak, to code the page in HTML in an editor, and to set up the service with CGI scripts and all that. So it was very low level stuff. We had a service, so you could register for a certain organization via our web page. So we had to fill forms. So we learned about forms. And then we wanted to send confirmation emails. So we had to fake sending emails because no one knew how to send emails. So we were really talking on port 25 SMTP protocol, like, hello. So my name is, okay, you are. My subject is, haha, thank you. Here's the body of my message. Thank you. That was it. Okay, goodbye. So like this protocol thing.
Yeah.
We're coding very low level. And that was fun. And that was the reason why I left UPS. So for a better job in some sense, it was closer to the university, and I like that.
Yeah, and learning HTML in those days should have been a challenge because
yeah, resources were again very scarce, so which made it easier also in some sense because you couldn't look. There was no Google, right? So there was no search engine, but there was a central site, let's say at the CERN in Switzerland, and from there, I mean, you could find about HTML, and they had documentation. So we were printing the documentation HTML 1.0. That was very little. I mean, there was not a lot about the language at the time. You could learn that quite well. Yeah.
Yeah. So you mentioned that your first contact with OR was in a class that was in Introduction to Mathematical Optimization or something.
Exactly. I think there were two reasons why I liked it. I didn't like the other stuff very much. So that was partly that it was above my head or out of my, I don't know. So topology and higher algebra and measure theory, that was not mine. Whereas, for example, the discrete optimization stuff, so graph theory, so like, I don't know, you're given a tree with a certain property, prove that the other property holds, right? So that was accessible to me, and I liked that also. Maybe because of the discreteness. Maybe I'm not a continuous guy, and maybe that stayed. But so I liked that that way of reasoning, and I knew that was for me. So I stayed in that path. Yeah.
Nice, but you actually never wanted to do a PhD.
No. Like others, so among our students, we were talking about that because we were seeing others who did, and no, not us. Come on, and I didn't that was not my path. I liked it, and then I mean, maybe this is a wrong memory, but my memory is I had my last. It's 25 years ago. I had my last exam. It was an oral exam in math optimization on Friday, and my then boss told me, "Okay, you can start here on Monday." I believe it's certainly a wrong memory, but this is my memory about it. So it was on very short notice. Of course, we were hoping for that, but he said, "We have a 7-month position for you. You can stay here." And I did, you know what? Because it was convenient. It was like I was working there anyway, so they said you can continue working here. So that was an environment I was used to see every day, and so I liked that perspective. So again, by coincidence, so to speak, I stayed. Maybe I did something to earn that coincidence. Of course, they wouldn't throw that position to like everyone to, okay, come on, you can start next Monday. But for me, it was very nice. Yeah.
Yeah. So you spent 7 months writing a proposal.
That's true. So that was my first contract, 7 months. And what I found on the desk when I started was the first stage of a proposal. So it was a one-pager. It was describing a project that was granted in the first stage, and it was my task to write, so to speak, the full proposal to be successful in the second stage. And I knew if I would be successful with that proposal, I would have 3 more years. So that was the plan. It was successful, by the way, but if it wouldn't have been successful, maybe we wouldn't talk, right? So another good thing that happened, it was about, so the one-pager said, we have a project together with railroads. So we have in chemical plants and in steel industry, we have these in-plant railroads. So they are, for the heavy transportation, they are operating their own locomotives. And it was my project to schedule these locomotives, so to serve all the transportation requests. And I had to form this into a full proposal. That was my first task.
Well, you're talking about 1996 or so?
96, exactly.
Yeah, and at that time you didn't have the papers available online as we do today.
No.
And you have to somewhat find them, asking them to author directly or in a library or something like that. So how was the process of, doing the research and writing and asking for papers when necessary?
Yes. So mostly we had a library. I went there because we had operations research, math programming, and all that. So I found some papers there, and then you look into the references, and then, okay, sometimes you have the journal there, and you fetch it was all photocopying, right? So sure. I still have that. It's a huge wall of just paper, and but sometimes the library didn't have it, and then you had to ask a remote library. So you had to fill a form. You had to fill a form with a typewriter, of course, because there was no online. And then you handed that in to your library. They handed it to whatever remote library. Then you got it back. Days, weeks later, you got a photocopy of the article. And this is how it grew, right? And then you had the article. That was not the one I needed. Maybe it's not so necessary. But they have references. Okay. And you start all over. So it was a tedious, long-lasting project. To do the literature research is quite different from today.
Yeah, but you see, do you think that doing a PhD back then was harder than today?
Because of all that, because of all these hurdles you had, I don't think so. I would even say it's harder today because of all that ease of access, right? So look, I had no choice. I had to wait 2 weeks for the article to arrive. Now, if you wait 2 weeks, I mean, you have the article now, and now you can spend the 2 weeks already somewhere else. So the expectations, I think, are much higher in a sense today. And there, again, we have the topic of the limitation, right? So because of no one was expecting you to know next day what was in that article. it was okay not to know next day. Today, we say, okay, good, you got it somewhere on a repository, download it, we can talk tomorrow about it. So it's different. Maybe it's not harder today, but I think it's it may be tougher, or the pressure in some sense is larger than it was when I was doing my PhD.
Yeah, I think it depends, of course, on the experience of each individual, but still,
of course, yeah,
it's something interesting to reflect about. How about your first conference and first journal paper? I asked that to everyone because I think it's nice.
Okay. So the first journal paper that came from my diploma, so to speak, master's thesis, and but that was not the result in the thesis. That came later. So, as I said, I was writing about polyhedral stuff and about an algorithm, and we needed a property that I didn't see. And I, again, maybe a false memory, but I think I had Nemhauser and Woolsey's book, and I was reading it with a glass of rosé wine. I think it was rosé. And yeah, I found something that I was needing at the time. And then we had a result, an algorithmic result, and we were publishing that. It was a computational geometry thing.
Oh.
So we were sending that to a journal, a prestigious one, and we immediately got it back, desk rejected. That was my first encounter with a journal. That was quick. So we were sending it, and it was immediately sent back.
But how would you deal with those negative feedback?
So I was told. So I was doing this together with another PhD student, and I was told that is normal. So don't worry. We just send it to the next journal, and we did. So maybe because the reason was, this is not a good fit for our journal. They didn't say, this is nonsense, or this is not worth it. Maybe they did say so, and I forgot, but we were just, because it was desk rejected, it was not even encouraged to make changes, right? So we could take it as is and send it to some, today we would say lesser journal, right? It was still a good journal, so computational geometry, theory, and applications, I like that. And I was so proud when it was accepted, of course. Maybe still I am very happy when we get papers accepted. That was my first paper. And what the first conference? The first conference was in Braunschweig. I was not co-organizing it, but I was contributing to the organization. So I was coding the website. That was my first conference. But the first real conference was in Lausanne, the ISMP 97, so the International Symposium on Math Programming.
Yeah.
And that was wonderful. So I was, all my friends at the time, and still today, they are no math people, so I was the only nerd. They were doing real things, good things. And I had to tell them what I am doing all day. They were asking, so you went to a conference, and how was it? Or what are you doing there? And I tried to find a picture. So imagine you're a musician, and you're going to a place, and everyone is there. So like the Rolling Stones and Genesis, and all the singers, all the names you know from the radio, they're all there, and they tell you how they play the guitar and how they arrange things and all that, what the rhythm is. And that was my impression from my first conference, that all the names I only knew from paper. They were all there, and you could actually talk to them. So I was so shy. I remember talking to François Soumy. So I didn't dare to talk to him in the room. So he left the room, and I chased him, walking after. But I took all my courage, and I said, "Okay, Monsieur Soumy," and I asked my question. And he gave me an answer, so
yeah,
that was good.
It happens to all of us. I once attended a conference in Brazil, and then Professor Gilbert Laporte was around, and I asked him kindly, "Can we take a picture or something?" Because it's an important thing, especially when you're starting the career, and you get inspired by all those people, and meeting them for the first time. It's always a nice and possibly a very important experience in our lives.
Yes.
Yeah.
So meeting people is probably more important than listening to the talks, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, that's arguably true in a way. So you are known for your extensive work on column generation, and you did a lot of column generation in your PhD research.
That's true.
Can you describe your experience on working with column generation in the mid to late 90s, and also with early versions of CPLEX, and what were the challenges, and there was lack of material, very few people working on the topic, and how did you find the bugs and etc.?
So you're right. So we had CPLEX at the time. It was in our department. So my boss, Uwe Zimmermann, he had close links to Bob Bixby. So we had CPLEX. I think we started with 2.0 really, and I started with 3.0. So it was really low level. I used the C interface, and I was coding a column generation code. Column generation was actually a good fit, by the way, for the format, because internally, I mean, it's not like today you're using a modeling language or whatever. So we were really low level, using the column-wise encoding of the matrix, right? So the counters and the indices and the values and all that, we were filling that. So this is how we built the model. So, but that way you could easily extend column-wise the model. So that was good, and that was what I did. And the documentation we had was like the printed manual in the next room, and there was one manual for everyone. So whoever had the manual had to keep it and not share it with the others, because then you were lost. Yeah, so there was no online resource or anything like that. Very low level, and it was only column generation, right? So I never used that for branching because otherwise I would have to implement my own tree management, because you cannot do that within the branch and bound of CPLEX. That's a box for me. And I never did that tree management because maybe, again, I would have to use fancy data structures for that. I mean, fancy, right? Too far away from me at the time, because I'm coming from Commodore C64 times. So also my code probably was very limited, and maybe it was buggy. So I would never know, and maybe no one would ever know if all that I did in column generation there contained bugs.
Yeah. How did you deal with the tailing off, stabilization?
A good question. So with the stabilization, I mean, that was 99 where the Duhamel paper came, and we learned about that, and I probably did not have a problem with stabilization, but I did stabilization only thereafter. So after my PhD,
okay.
I never did any stabilization, did experiments only later. But for example, tailing off, so I did not deal with tailing off. I was proud that I could see the tailing off because, right? So it was like, okay, some well-known people write about there's this effect of little progress towards the end of the process, and I plotted that, and so I could confirm, yes, I have that too. There was nothing I could do against that at the time. I was instead trying to find out why it occurred. So that was a time. This is also one of the most cited article I have is about this column generation thing, right? And that came out of my PhD thesis, and that in a sense is a collection of everything I could find about column generation, because we wanted to have answers. So okay, we have the effect. What could explain the effect? Okay, we have that instability. Why could there be an instability? So I was trying to find the resources that might explain that, and maybe there were no explanations, but certainly either I was not good at, or I had no abilities to do anything against these effects. Right?
Yeah. And there was a very special person that came to participate in your thesis presentation, thesis defense, as a member of the jury.
That's true. That's Jacques Desrosiers. So
you have a very special bond with him, right?
Yes, I would say professionally and in my real life. So I think he's the closest person. I mean, in the OR world for sure, but also he's one of my very closest friends. I visited him if we're not in a pandemic as often as I can. Yes, and he, so I because column generation, so of course I read from the Montreal people about column generation. This is the way I picked up the subject, the topic, what you can do. And I've met him at a workshop, and then I asked him whether he would be part of my jury, of my thesis committee, and he agreed. And this is how it started. Yes, and we published some things thereafter, and it was a very good thing that this happened in my life. Yes.
Incidentally, go ahead.
Sorry that I interrupted.
No problem.
Because it's the French thing again. He's my père au R, so he's my OR father, right? He's not my doctoral father, because that is Uwe Zimmermann, but I'm always calling him père au R. He's my father.
That's a nice tribute. Yes. Yeah. Incidentally, I attended a course by Professor Jacques Desrosiers, I think around 2008 or 9 or something like that. When I was doing PhD, he came to Brazil, and he gave, of course, a short-term course on column generation. And at some point, he started to use your slides. So he was explaining I think probably the vehicle scheduling with time windows or something, or the sub-problem was a shortest path with time windows. And then he was showing the dynamic program and all that. So I think that was one of the first time I heard about your name and your work. And it was almost when you started Twitter, but we're going to talk about that later. But then I knew you before you became known for your Twitter activity. And I mean, during the PhD, you also had your first 2 kids.
Correct.
And how did you manage,
Well, first of all, you're never alone. We were 2 people to raise kids, of course. But I think I spent quite some time. I invested quite a share of my time in that, and maybe I did nothing else than the kids and the PhD. I was quite obsessed with the writing and with the working on the PhD thesis. Yeah, maybe that was good or maybe bad, I don't know, but there was little other than that, right? So in a sense, how do you manage? Well, from today's perspective, if people would ask me when they are doing their PhD, because this is often something like with uncertainty and all that, right? And would it be a good point in time to have kids, for example? My experience is still yes, of course. When, if not then, because then, in some sense, you're still, let's call it flexible. I don't know. Maybe this is a totally wrong impression, because if you talk to people today, they are so much under the uncertainty of there's no job perspective. Now, when I have kids, what will I do when I have no permanent position at the university? I understand all that, and that is a serious problem. But for me, it was like maybe I was naive again, right? So, like, yes, it's a good time. We want that. We have that. So let's do it. Maybe without a plan, like so many times before, but it was good.
Yeah, you're really adventurous in a way. And then after finish your PhD, you moved to Berlin, but you actually tried to apply for positions in the US and Canada.
Correct. So that seemed very natural to me. So just do it, to try to, assistant professor positions, and not even postdoc, right? I didn't know that postdoc term. So I applied for the assistant professor positions in Canada and the US. I wrote a lot of applications. Maybe that was, with hindsight today, I would say I was totally naive. No one knew me. We did not publish during my PhD. Maybe I wrote that computational geometry thing, right? But other than that, I had no credentials, as you would say. So why would they hire me? I didn't know. So this is why I applied. I got rejections. So then instead of moving 6,000 kilometers to the west, I went 200 kilometers to the east. Almost the same, but so I joined that Berlin group of combinatorial optimization graph algorithms.
Yeah.
Wolf Möhring, another influencer, so to speak, in my career. Yeah.
Yeah, so now you have role models. Finally, people as role
now
models.
I have role models. Yes,
Yeah.
now I have them.
Right.
Yeah.
So you stayed in Berlin for 7 years, and you had a pretty busy time. You had 2 more kids. Then you got divorced, then remarried, and then you had another 2 kids, so 6 kids around. So, and you also became productive during that period. You started to be known, and your work on color generation was starting to attract attention. And how would you describe that period?
That's a good question, because of course we were trying to, I mean, only the professional side, right? So we tried to answer the why questions, what's happening here. And maybe one particular thing with this time is that I had a limited time contract. So this is still the German system that there's nothing like tenure. So today you have that tenure track, right? But at the time I did not have that. And maybe what I remember most of that time is how it ended. Because again, that was an ISMP 2009 in Chicago, I guess. And so that was in August. I had a contract until the end of September, because I started in September 03, and I had a contract until 09. So I was at the conference and I didn't know how it went further. Maybe I was almost sure it would end. So that was in the way forward. And then I met Rüdiger Schulz from Duisburg in the elevator, and he said, Alexander Martin, at the time in Darmstadt, he has a position, you should ask him. So I called him, and very soon thereafter he said, okay, you can start. It's a limited term position for 2 years, and you can come here to Darmstadt and have that visiting professorship. Maybe that is what I remember most, because if you look back, it looks like, he was there at that place, and then he went to that place, and then he went to that place, and then he finally went to Aachen. But when moving forward, it was like, okay, there is a wall I could run into. Okay, I just skipped it. And there's another wall I could run into. But I just avoided it. Another wall. And I just avoided it by inches. So that was very, very tight sometimes. And in particular there, it was only a few weeks. And there was no plan B. I had no plan B, really, like for applying for my study program, and then I got rejected, and I had no plan B. Okay, I studied math. So here, again, a coincidence. And so I moved to Darmstadt. I commuted from Berlin to Darmstadt, so that's like 4 hours train ride. I did that for 1 year, and at that time I started applying for permanent positions, also the one in Aachen. And after about a year, I got the message that they would invite me, and they could offer me a position. And they were very cautious with me. So when they offered me the position, maybe, okay, could you imagine that you come here to Aachen? And they were super cautious, and I was, what are they doing? So look at my position. I have a limited term position. I have no alternatives. You have a position, it's permanent. Why on earth shouldn't I take it? I learned about that after some time, because so look, the hiring process, like everywhere else, is you have a short list, 3 names on them. My name was not on it. The 3 persons on the list, they all declined the position. Okay, so they opened the position again. They had another short list with 2 names on that, and mine was not on it. The 2 persons declined. So then I was the next, so I was number 6. And they were at the faculty meeting. Okay, he is eligible formally and all that. So we can put him on the list as number 3, and the second list, so number 6. And then they offered me that position, and now that's the reason why they were so cautious. And of course, I was happy, but it was again a super lucky constellation that 5 persons before me declined that position that I have, and I'm having a wonderful position.
Yeah.
But I know and I appreciate that I was lucky. That's it.
Wow. So you were the 6th person to be called. You have
exactly.
6 children, and incidentally, you were the 6th guest of season 2 of Subject 2.
Oh, you see, let's wait for what another fancy stuff will happen with this number 6.
Yeah. Okay, so you finally moved to Aachen, and but also I would like you to comment on your experiences with the SCIP framework. You said you never coded a branch and price from scratch. Probably that's one of the reasons, because you had the sort of a framework available.
That's true. So first, the reason was I was afraid of doing this tree management, and then when we really first needed it, doing the branching and cutting and all that, we were in Berlin at the time, and the SCIP, Tobias Achterberg, the developer, was at the time the developer who he was very close, so there was a good interaction, and he was building that constrained integer programming framework, right? And in the solving loop for the LP, of course, there is a pricing ability built in, but probably no one was really testing it, because at SCIP they were more into cutting, so polyhedral combinatorics and all that. So we had an application and we went into trying the pricing. So maybe we are responsible for some developments also in the early versions of the code. For example, I don't know, when you're somewhere in the tree and do the pricing, you have to respect the branching decisions in the pricing, so you have to know about the branching decisions, so there must be some data structure at least capturing, holding that information, right? And maybe we have that easily accessible in SCIP because of, not of us, but we were probably the first to make use of that. So so that is how we came into doing branch and price, and we stick until today to the SCIP framework. Yeah,
it's very interesting to hear you saying that you were scared to handle the tree management, but that happens to most people. No, that probably happens to other people as well, and it's nice that you can acknowledge, because it can be annoying, you have to avoid several copies of the master problem. You have to know where to include the columns, or exclude them while doing branching and all that. So it can be really challenging, and that's why it might be a little bit scary for certain people. I understand completely.
Yes, and which is why I'm thankful for having frameworks which take this work away from us. So to speak. Yeah.
So, as I said already, you have many contributions when it comes to column generation. But would you like to comment on your recent work on automatic Dantzig-Wolfe reformulation of mixed integer linear programs? Something tells me that is one of your favorites.
It is. Maybe the favorite. You're perfectly correct. So that also started in the Berlin Times. So a lot was around about implementing branch and price codes, branch, price, and cut. And we thought, okay, the only thing that is missing when you would like to have that as a commodity, so like a branch and cut solver, of course the experts know what's inside, but if you're just a user, the cutting just happens, right, without you knowing it. And we thought, okay, it would be nice to have that also for Dantzig-Wolfe decomposition, so decomposition things, branch and price, to happen without your knowledge. And what was necessary for that was to, we call it, detect the structure of the model so that you can apply a decomposition. So because once you have that, everything follows. And this is why, so I invested quite a lot with others, of course, with many people who worked on that, into this, looking what structure is in a model to exploit it in a decomposition framework. And that also connects to where I think maybe not the field is going, but where I would like to continue working on, because if I have that as a goal to make this technology, or our optimization technology more generally, available to more persons, then it must be more low threshold, right? So, and for that, maybe we teach many people how to model with integer programs, so they know how to do that. But maybe their model is not a good one. Maybe it's even a bad one for that purpose, and they don't know. But maybe they don't even care whether it's good or bad. We should know. Maybe we should look at their model and say, okay, you could correct this, but why should they care? So just do the correction and do all this automatically. So maybe we would like to learn about the semantics. You are trying to model a supply chain application, and I see that, and I know that there are tricks for supply chain applications, and I apply them without telling you, because you don't have to know. You're only interested in the solution, right? So this is something where this thinking of model structure brings me at the moment. Now I'm interested in the meaning, in the semantics, so to speak.
Yeah.
And that's, some might say, are you doing integer linear programming? Really, isn't that boring? We have been doing integer linear since so long. Everyone goes into convex, non-convex, non-linear, semi-definite, all that fancy stuff. First of all, that's too complicated for me. But then, I think we are not done with linear yet.
Yeah.
So I think there's a lot of stuff we don't know or we could do with linear, integer linear. So I think I will stick there until the end.
Yeah, it's fascinating work, yet very challenging. Yeah, I hope it turns out to be who knows, a very useful tool in the future. And I wonder if all these groups all across the globe, whether they should do a sort of a consortium or they should join forces towards the development of tools that are more interesting from the user perspective. Totally, and because you should not expect one to know all those details when it comes to modeling. Of course, you know all the basics from a integer programming model, that it's okay, but when it goes to all these other details, and it's kind of hard. And also it maybe what prevents the spreading of our application.
Yes.
Sometimes because this is very hard. We do a lot of papers, but maybe not enough softwares, and because probably we're not recognized that for that. Ruslan Sadikov, that you know, was discussing that the other day. What about your teaching activity? I know you like that very much.
I like it a lot. I was told I teach too much also early on. Several times maybe I teach too much, but I love teaching actually. So we teach a lot. I teach, as you said in the introduction, 2,000 students every year, 2,000 exams. And yeah, at least 5 courses, plus seminars, plus practice projects. So we have a lot of, well, maybe this is also related to what you just said. Our field is small. You said we should develop tools so that more people can use that, right? So how could we go there? And maybe teaching is one way. Just inform people about this technology we have. And I certainly do not expect everyone to use it, but maybe it's just when they are in some positions later on, certainly they will be in decision situations, planning situations. Maybe they remember, there were these weird guys talking about, what was it? Integer Pro, what? Maybe they will remember and talk to some people they know who know that. And then this is a way forward. So I like teaching a lot, and I invest quite some time in that, yeah.
Oh, that's very good, and it's very nice to hear that you sometimes you were very you're an accomplished researcher, but teaching it's something that could be not that enthusiastic.
I think it should go hand in hand, right? So this is also a way of spreading the latest technology, the latest development directly to the students, but also the other way around. They have questions. I mean, I learn from them a lot, right? Yeah. I never take this for granted. In particular, for example, when I teach at the business school, when there are seasoned people who have a lot of life experience, they come back to school and I tell them, look, I have an integer program and that is used in practice. And they query like, come on, this is never used in practice. So they challenge me, right? And that is good, because I always have to find, okay, is it true what I'm telling them? Do I really have that experience? Maybe they are right with their concerns and all that. So this is also very strong in this direction. I like that.
Yeah. So let's talk about your social media activity. You joined Twitter in 2009.
Yes.
And you became one of the most popular OR figures around there, with more than 6,000 followers. In our world, that is quite a lot. How did everything start?
That started, I think, out of curiosity. I think my first tweet was, again, in teaching, while we were grading an exam. I think my first tweet was something like, okay, we are almost done. We were doing it all day and it was very late. And I was just wanted to post a message to my 0 followers. We are done. We have it. And this is how it started. And I was using Twitter, I mean, almost exclusively. And I never used the other social media platforms that much. But Twitter I stick with for various purposes over time, I think. So for me, it was a source of information. So I was learning there about what prescriptive analytics, about the Notion, about Industry 4.0. I was sometimes following German teachers or German politics or some. So it was a source of information. And the followership grew continuously over time. So that was not, I mean, not intended. It was maybe a side product, and I had some at some point. And maybe then I also started actively sharing information because I knew there were different communities. I mean, OR is interdisciplinary, right? We have math people, computer science, engineering, business people, and others. And I knew sometimes there's maybe a result from computer science I liked. That was just a personal opinion. I liked that. And maybe I thought, okay, maybe someone else will like that too, so I shared it. And maybe because of that, some people took notice of that activity. That it was never really planned, but I noticed that this could be my way of paying back. So I got information from Twitter, so why not giving information to Twitter?
Yeah. But do you have any clue why you have so many followers? I mean, you told that you were inspired by people like Michael Trick, which has this famous blog and all that, but Laura. You surpassed him eventually. So it's crazy. So.
Yeah, maybe because that activity never went calm. So I also started blogging at some point, but there I stopped again. So the blog is probably unread by people, but Twitter, I see every day that there is some reaction at least, and maybe this is this addictedness thing.
That was my next question. If you have a certain level of addiction.
Totally. So this is this social currency. I get the likes, and the retweet. Cool. Of course, this does something to me, right? And this encourages me to continue in some sense. Why I got so many, I really don't know.
Are you recognized around, like in conferences? That's the guy from Twitter.
Sometimes, yes. So more and more people are on Twitter. Of course, not everyone, but it happened to me several times at conferences. Hey, come on, you're famous, you're on Twitter, and let us take a photo together, and then we will tweet it. And so I never knew. You know, I always say the graph of knowing each other is directed. So, of course, I know some people, they know me, but also some people know me, for example, from Twitter. I don't know them, right? Because maybe they never tweeted or whatever. So and then someone recognizes, talks to you on the street because there the arrow is pointing in my direction. He knows me, they know me, she knows me, whoever. And that happens, yeah. It's always fun.
And what are the pros and cons for being on Spotlight and having so many followers on Twitter?
Maybe I never really thought this through because it just happened. Now I realize, because, for example, you mentioned it, you have, maybe a certain kind of responsibility.
Yeah.
Even though I don't feel it that much, it's still true that sometimes. So I'm also very known for just saying things I might regret later on. Sometimes I tweet some things I might regret later on, but so maybe this is one thing that happened that I may think one more time before tweeting sometimes, but sometimes I just say, okay, still do it.
Do you think you have a provocative nature?
Sometimes, yes, I think so. I don't know why actually, where this comes from. Maybe this is some kind of insecurity, just to move forward with a provocative thing, because then I'm in action. I don't know where it comes from, but I would say yes. Sometimes I I'm inclined to say more than I said, like here today probably as well, but people will try to make some sense of that. Yeah.
Okay, right. I mean, I must thank you, by the way, for your very nice post on one paper that I was a co-author, and it was on generating guitar solos
Exactly
by integer programming, and that paper would never get that much popularity or even would be known to this day if we're not for your tweet. You put a really nice guy, you know, hand-banging guy. You know? So that was very kind of you, and then later on, when I started the project on the Subjective project, I had this very good friend of mine, Rafael Martinelli. He tweeted. I didn't even have a Twitter account for this project, and you immediately reacted saying, "Great idea, great name." So that was also very, very nice, and it encourages you. You see, so you're a guy, you know, we have that much followers, and when you kind of approve something or you react favorably towards some fact, maybe you're influencing other people or influence even that people more than you think.
Yes, maybe, but you know what? So when we were talking the other day, you were mentioning also this, and maybe you told me that this actually happens. So I don't know, maybe it does, but okay, so two possibilities, or at least two. Maybe we overestimate the influence of the tweet on your work. Maybe your work was just good, and it was just good without the tweet. So this is what I would think. But maybe, as you said, so you took it as an encouragement. So it had no direct influence on the quality of the work because the work was good, but it had maybe some small impact on how you felt.
Yeah, exactly.
And this I didn't know before you told me. Maybe people would say, "But come on, but that's obvious, isn't it?" Maybe it was not so obvious to me, and I thank you for mentioning this maybe basic fact of social activity, that there's also a positive effect of the tweeting.
So I can tell that other people might be very happy if they see their paper publication retweeted or tweeted by you. So they say, "Wow, I got his attention."
They shouldn't.
Yeah. But I'm saying that when you talk about responsibility, so at times when you do that, you're sort of validating or even encouraging those people, and I think it's very nice in a way. So on the other hand, I mentioned that you have many followers, and that's a lot in terms of OR. But when you compare to other fields, even closely related fields, it's nowhere near the number of followers that some guys have. And
totally, yeah.
What are your views on this?
Well, you're probably referring to fields we all know, like artificial intelligence, machine learning, data science, big data, all that. So first of all, I don't envy them, okay? So they have something to say, so why not have big accounts? But maybe this is a reflection of, so when you say I have a very big OR account, and they have much bigger data science, whatever accounts. So maybe that reflects also the size of the fields and the marketing and attractivity and awareness of these fields. So we are many OR persons in the world, but compared to other fields like data science, for example, we are so few. In a sense, everyone knows everyone, or at least we could. And so this is good, of course, but maybe this is also a danger to our fields. I know that Eduardo Schoa, he was also talking about that a little bit. So that we think, and I believe that is true, we have a super good technology to help people in industry in so many situations to make better decisions, to make better plans, whatever the climate crisis may need us. So we don't know, but we have a super good tool, or many tools. But not so many people know about that. How come that it's not the younger field, but it recently, like artificial intelligence, recently got much more attention than we did. Now we could envy this, but we could also ask, so why did it happen? Even the media is publishing about this. And I thought about this often, and I think one explanation might be that I mean, it's really a prejudice, but I think they have more digestible content. This is one part, I think. So you can explain, for example, in fraud detection, right? So you are making credit card transfers, whatever. I detect a pattern in your transfers. I think this is not your pattern, so this is fraud. Detected. You can explain this to people, and they think, even when they don't understand, and they see, okay, I see a value in this. Now, if I come and say, I can, for example, at our university, I can do the timetabling, the university course timetabling for the whole university, then even knowledgeable people in our computer science department, for example, they say, no way, this will never work. So imagine, there were, I mean, we did this, but there were so many reservations against that by knowledgeable people who should know better. So when it's hard to convince them, how can I convince a broader audience? So maybe, so I was trying to term this as we are too complicated. And this, you mentioned that before, so this is an even stronger motivation for us as a community to develop easier accesses to our technology. So more low-level entries, better tool chains, better explanation, better marketing. But then again, we're so few people. So it's a dilemma. But I see this, and so I don't envy the large communities, but I see them as a motivation, as a someone to walk in their path. How they do it, but maybe we're not on the same. So how do you say, on the same page? Because as I said, maybe our stuff is more complicated, more complex to sell, or to grasp that this could actually be true what we are doing. So that it's harder to sell.
I see what you mean. Maybe you have to reflect on this, rethink our strategies to make our more popular, maybe valuing the work of software, and sometimes you just see papers, and you maybe you overlook the how can you see the value, and it's how can you rank that, so it doesn't count. So one may not be very tempted to do that. So
But this is a perfect, and I'm sure you didn't this on purpose, but this is a very nice bridge to one thing that you mentioned earlier today, the project with Panos. Because we have that journal. I don't want to advertise it. I mean, just delete the name. If you want
to take the opportunity to briefly comment
just delete the name. But maybe I can use this also for some thoughts on publication, because that is what the journal should be. It's a normal journal, but we try to value also these, let's call them new developments. So I'm an old guy, so I can call that new development. That we are writing software, we are sharing repository, we are hosting data, we are having technical contributions which are not a theorem, which are not only, let's say, an application of our models and methods to some practical situation, right? So we have more contributions, meanwhile, I think, in our science, and we should value this in publications, in when hiring people for academic positions. So, okay, who's that guy? He only wrote software. Well, come on, that's so valuable, so difficult to do. We should appreciate that.
Yes.
And in the journal, we are trying. It's a long way to make this transition, but we're trying to also value this and invite contributions in that sense, where we think there should be much more attraction and visibility towards that.
Excellent. I really appreciate all your efforts, and I hope it gets better and better, and that people will start to submit more contributions, not only papers, to the journal, right?
Yeah, thank you.
So Marco, I had an excellent time. Thank you so much for your, participation here. You were the first German guest, and I'm also really glad that I was able to have you here. So I just hope to meet you soon at some time in person.
Yes.
And then once again, danke. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. So you see, it went dark while we were talking. I enjoyed it a lot. I learned a lot from you. So thanks really a lot for having me as your guest. It was great. Thank you.
Thank you once again, and see you soon. Ciao.
See you soon. Bye.
Bye.
Ciao.